Everyone in the neighborhood knew my father was alive, but to me, it always felt like I never had one. Other children would run into their father's arms whenever they returned home from work, laughing and asking what gifts they had brought. I never experienced that kind of love. My father was always somewhere else, drinking with his friends, gambling away the little money he managed to get, or disappearing for days without telling anyone where he had gone. Even when he was at home, it was as if he couldn't see us. He never asked if we had eaten. He never cared whether I had school fees or clothes to wear. To the rest of the neighborhood, he was just another man trying to survive. But inside our home, he was a stranger who had abandoned his family without ever leaving the house. My mother worked tirelessly while my father refused to provide for us. She woke up before dawn every single day to prepare for the market, carrying heavy baskets on her head and walking long distances under the hot Lagos sun just to earn enough money to buy food for us. When the market was bad, she washed clothes for neighbors, cleaned people's houses, and accepted any honest work she could find. She hardly complained because she didn't want me to lose hope. Even when she returned home exhausted, she still cooked, cleaned, and smiled at me as if everything was fine. She always told me that education would change my life and begged me never to become bitter because of our situation. Years of suffering finally caught up with my mother. She became weaker with every passing month, but she kept hiding her pain from me. Sometimes I noticed her coughing late at night or struggling to catch her breath after returning from the market. Whenever I asked if she was okay, she would simply smile and tell me she was only tired. The truth was that she could no longer afford to take care of herself because every naira she made was spent trying to keep food on our table. One afternoon, while returning from the market, she collapsed by the roadside. Kind strangers helped bring her home, but there was no money to take her to a proper hospital. We watched helplessly as her condition worsened day after day until she finally took her last breath. The strongest woman I had ever known was gone, and with her, every sense of safety I had ever felt disappeared. The day we buried my mother was the day my childhood ended. As I stood beside her grave, I couldn't stop wondering why life had been so unfair to the only person who had ever truly loved me. I believed that maybe losing his wife would finally make my father realize the importance of family. Sadly, I couldn't have been more wrong. I thought my father would change after losing my mother, but I was wrong. Instead of becoming more responsible, he became even worse. There was hardly any food in the house because he still refused to work. He spent most of his time drinking with his friends while I struggled to survive. My school fees remained unpaid, and before long, I had to stop going to school completely. Whenever I asked him for money to buy food or exercise books, he shouted at me and accused me of disturbing him. Sometimes our neighbors secretly gave me food because they knew how badly I was suffering. Every day, I prayed that something good would happen, but every new day only brought fresh disappointment. One evening, he suddenly bought me a beautiful dress. It was the first time in my life that my father had ever bought anything special for me. I couldn't believe my eyes. For a brief moment, I felt hopeful. Maybe he had finally changed. I thanked him with tears in my eyes and quickly put on the dress. Little did I know that the dress was never a gift. It was preparing me for something that would change my life forever. He told me someone wanted to help us. He said a wealthy man had agreed to support our family because he felt sorry for our condition. I didn't question him because I wanted to believe that good people still existed. We left the house together and traveled across Lagos until we arrived at a beautiful hotel unlike anywhere I had ever been before. Everything around me looked expensive, and I wondered why someone so rich would choose to help people like us. My father told me to smile and be respectful because the man was doing us a great favor. I trusted him because he was my father. He collected the money, then told me to go inside. I watched as the man handed my father a thick envelope filled with cash. My father counted it quickly before turning to me. He calmly told me to go inside and appreciate the man for helping us. I still didn't understand what he meant until the hotel room door closed behind me. When I finally came out with tears in my eyes, my father didn't ask if I was okay. The only thing he wanted to know was whether the man had given me any extra money. Whenever he needed money, he sent me to different men. It slowly became our new reality. Every time rent was due, every time he wanted alcohol, every time he needed money, he already knew who to call. Sometimes he arranged meetings in hotels, sometimes in expensive apartments. I stopped asking questions because I already knew there was no point. My father no longer saw me as his daughter. To him, I had become the easiest way to make money without working. As the months turned into years, people began to recognize me. They whispered whenever I walked past them. Nobody knew that the person who had introduced me to that life was the same man who was supposed to protect me. If I didn't bring enough money home, he forced me to go back out. No amount of money was ever enough for him. Whenever I handed him everything I had earned, he complained that it wasn't enough. Sometimes he insulted me, and other times he ordered me to leave the house immediately and find more men before coming back. The little girl who once dreamed of becoming successful slowly disappeared. Then my father became seriously ill. The same man who had always looked strong suddenly became weak. He could barely walk without assistance, and the friends he spent years drinking with disappeared one after another. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be abandoned. I took care of him because, despite everything he had done to me, I couldn't leave him suffering alone. Part of me hoped he would finally apologize for destroying my future, but those words never came. He died, but my nightmare continued. After he was buried, I wanted to leave the nightlife behind forever, but life was not that simple. I had no education, no qualifications, no savings, and no family willing to support me. The only way I knew to survive was the same painful life my father had forced me into years earlier. Even after his death, I remained trapped inside the prison he had built around me. One night, I looked into the mirror and no longer recognized myself. The young woman staring back at me looked nothing like the little girl my mother had worked so hard to protect. My eyes had lost their innocence, and my smile had disappeared. I remembered my mother's words about living an honest life and never allowing hardship to steal my dignity. For the first time in many years, I cried without holding back. I realized that if I continued blaming my past forever, I would never give myself the chance to build a better future. That was the night I decided to change my life. It wasn't easy. I had to start from the very bottom, taking small jobs that barely paid enough to survive. Slowly, my life began to improve. I found purpose again and realized that my mother's sacrifices had not been completely wasted. Your past does not have to decide your future. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the very people we trust with our lives. But no matter how painful your story may be, you still have the power to write a different ending. My father chose to destroy my future, but I chose to rebuild it. And if my story teaches anything, let it be this: no matter how dark yesterday was, there is always hope for a brighter tomorrow.